When the night of Halloween descends, the collective imagination begins to stir with images so ancient, so primal, that they appear almost of their own accord. The child's mask, the carved pumpkin, the flickering candle, the skeletons parading in mockery of death, none of these are mere customs. They are vessels of the archetypal currents that have haunted mankind since the first cave shadows trembled before firelight. On such nights, the veil between what we know and what we suppress thins, and the unconscious takes liberty to manifest itself in symbolic forms. We gather around bonfires, or now in suburban streets, to reenact an old ritual, the confrontation with shadow, with death, with that which hides behind the mask of civilization. I speak to you now as though we are gathered not in a hall of rational discourse, but in a chamber of mysteries, where the lamps flicker and the air itself vibrates with something unseen. Imagine this. Every mask you see tonight is not only a disguise, it is a revelation. The monster, the witch, the vampire, they are not costumes merely chosen at random, but emanations of psychic patterns buried deep in the unconscious, calling for expression. For when the archetype is denied the dignity of acknowledgement, it forces itself upon us in dreams, in fantasies, in projections upon others. It is important to recognize that Halloween is not an invention of modern frivolity. Beneath the candies and the laughter lies the ancient festival of Samhain, when the selves perceive the threshold between the living and the dead as porous, a passageway through which spirits might return. But what are spirits, if not the symbolic representatives of what we refuse to integrate? They are the ghosts of our own unacknowledged truths. Wandering in the twilight of consciousness, you see, my friends, the psyche never forgets. What is repressed lives on waiting for the moment of weakness or the moment of ritual, when it may re-emerge. And so it is that on this particular night, the collective permits the uncanny. Children run into the darkness wearing the visages of death itself, while parents smile, as if by this parody the terror of mortality is appeased. The skeleton in the doorway laughs at its own demise, and the witch cackles at the very forces of nature that humankind once feared. But let us not mistake parody for dismissal. Every joke hides a secret truth. Every mask, while concealing, also reveals. Consider the archetype of the witch, often encountered in this season. She is the wise old woman, the keeper of forbidden knowledge, the anima in her destructive or transformative form. In her we find both the terror of the feminine unrestrained and the reverence for the mystery of life and death. For centuries she has been demonized, burned, and persecuted, yet she persists in the collective imagination because she is indispensable. The witch awakens when we have neglected the wisdom of the unconscious. When we have severed ourselves from instinct, from nature, from the cycles of decay and rebirth, her broom does not carry her to mere fantasy. It signifies transcendence, a passage into another psychic dimension. Or take the vampire. Is he merely a ghoul of popular fiction? No. He is a projection of something far older. The archetype of psychic possession, the parasitic complex that feeds on the vitality of the ego. In him we see desire unbound, immortality purchased at the cost of another's life force. But we also see the shadow side of eros, of intimacy, turned into domination. On Halloween night, as masks of fangs and cloaks flood the streets, what truly awakens in the unconscious is our recognition of how often we drain or are drained by others in psychic exchange. The vampire archetype whispers, beware of what consumes you unseen. The skeleton, meanwhile, reduces all to the bone, stripping away the illusion of personality, wealth, and power. It is the archetype of memento mori, the reminder of death. Yet paradoxically, the skeleton dances. In medieval art, it plays the fiddle, while kings and peasants alike must join its dance. On Halloween night, the skeleton on your neighbor's porch, swaying in mock animation, is not a mere decoration. It is the unconscious insisting that we not forget the inevitability that equalizes all existence, and by confronting it with laughter, we enact the ritual of taming our fear. But deep within, something stirs an uneasy recognition that death is the great unknown, and in acknowledging it, we paradoxically learn to live. The mask itself is an archetype. When a child dons a mask, the ego is loosened from its ordinary constraints. Behind the mask, they are free to behave in ways otherwise forbidden. The timid child roars like a beast. The gentle child brandishes an axe. The quiet one cackles with delight at their sudden wickedness. This is not play alone. This is initiation. For the mask is the mediator between the conscious self and the archetypal force it channels. Across cultures, masks have always been instruments of ritual. Whether in African ceremonies, Japanese no theater, or the festivals of Dionysus, to put on the mask is to invite the archetype to dance through you. Now, why does this matter? Because the archetypes do not vanish when we ignore them. They accumulate energy in the unconscious, and when the rational daylight of consciousness grows too sterile, too rigid, the archetypes will erupt with violence, either in dreams, in neurosis, or in collective frenzy. Rituals such as Halloween are society's unconscious mechanism for controlled release. It is a night when the archetypal images are permitted to roam openly, so that their energies might be acknowledged without consuming us entirely. Civilization cannot survive if it denies its shadows. Halloween, though dressed in play, is a safety valve for the psyche. But let me speak more personally. Many of you may recall dreams that arrive in this season, dreams darker and stranger than usual. You may find yourself chased by figures in masks, or wandering through cemeteries, or seeing loved ones who have long since died. These dreams are not random. They are the psyche's reflection of what the collective itself is enacting. The thinness of the veil is not only between the living and the dead, it is between the conscious and the unconscious. And so your dream life becomes porous, leaking images that normally remain sealed. Pay attention to these dreams. They are not to be dismissed. They are the personal face of the archetypal drama. The veil, my friends, is a symbol of liminality. It is the boundary that both separates and connects. On Halloween night, that veil trembles. We feel it in the air, in the sudden chill, in the rustling of leaves that seem to whisper more than the mere wind. Children sense it instinctively. Their laughter is edged with a thrill of fear, as though they know they are brushing against something real. Adults dismiss it as superstition, but in truth, they too feel it. Only they repress it beneath layers of rationality. Yet the unconscious knows, and it waits for acknowledgement. Let me ask you this. When you look upon the jack-o'-lantern, do you see only a carved vegetable, or do you feel the flicker of the numinous, the light trapped within darkness? The human attempt to guard against the spirits by mocking their faces in grotesque parody. The pumpkin glows as an inner sun against the encroaching night. A fragile defense, yet also an invocation. We carve a face not merely to frighten away what we fear, but to embody it, to domesticate it. This too is archetypal work. In truth, every symbol of Halloween is a mirror reflecting back to us our deepest psychological truths. The haunted house, for instance, is nothing less than the psyche itself, the place where forgotten memories lurk in darkened rooms, where voices whisper from the past, where doors creak open onto repressed trauma. To walk through a haunted house is to walk through your own unconscious, and the thrill you feel is the thrill of proximity to your own shadow. Do not mistake this lecture for a condemnation of the festival. I am not here to moralize, but to reveal. The psyche does not judge archetypes as good or evil, they simply are. What matters is whether we recognize them, whether we learn from their language. For the witch, the vampire, the skeleton in the mask, these are our teachers. They awaken on Halloween night, not because they are summoned by culture, but because they demand to be seen. The secret veil, then, is not merely cosmic, it is within you. It is the gauze between your ego and your unconscious, between the face you show the world and the forces that move behind it. On this night, that veil grows thin, and you are given the opportunity to look, if you dare, but beware, to look is to risk transformation. When you allow yourself to sense the archetypes stirring on Halloween night, you begin to notice that they do not appear as isolated figures. They come as a procession, a parade of shadows and luminous beings crossing the liminal threshold of consciousness. The witch does not walk alone, nor does the skeleton dance in solitude. They accompany one another as if they are fragments of a vast myth that we have forgotten, but still perform unconsciously. It is a drama as old as humanity itself, reenacted every year when the sun moves toward the dark half of the cycle. To enter into this drama consciously is to recognize that what we call superstition is in fact an encounter with symbolic reality. The modern person laughs at ghosts, and yet dreams are haunted every night by figures that refuse to die. The rationalist scoffs at demons, but their neuroses are filled with persecutory voices that drain the spirit with relentless torment. The enlightened one denies the witch, but then despises the intuitive depths of the feminine, fearing what cannot be controlled by intellect. You see, we do not escape the archetypes by denying them. We only meet them unprepared, surprised, and undone when they erupt into our lives. Halloween, then, is not mere entertainment. It is rehearsal for the inevitable confrontation with the unconscious. There is a peculiar wisdom in children's instinct to demand treats from strangers at night. Trick or treating is not simply a game of sugar and laughter. It is the enactment of a primordial ritual, the offering to the spirits at the threshold. The child approaches the door, masked and unrecognizable, embodying the spirit world. The adult, recognizing this, must give a token, a sweet, a gift, an acknowledgement, or else risk the trick, the mischief of the other world. This is an echo of ancient propitiations, when people offered food to wandering spirits lest they be harmed. The modern parent thinks it is only a game, but the psyche remembers the child in costume is both innocent and terrifying, a living emissary of the unconscious knocking upon your door, and you must answer. Let us speak of the archetype of the shadow, which takes center stage on this night. The shadow is everything you do not wish to acknowledge about yourself, the desires you repress, the aggressions you deny, the weaknesses you conceal. On Halloween, the shadow emerges, clothed in masks and capes, announcing itself without shame. You dress as a monster, and in so doing, you confess a secret truth that you too contain monstrosity. You dress as a ghost, and thus acknowledge your fear of mortality. You laugh at yourself, and in that laughter, you release the shadow's grip. But make no mistake, the shadow is not defeated by mockery. It is invited in, given its due, and for a night it walks beside you. There is also the archetype of the trickster, who is very much alive on this night. He hides in the laughter of children playing pranks, in the playful mischief of misrule, in the inversion of ordinary order. The trickster is chaos in miniature, a reminder that all structures are fragile, all certainties temporary. He breaks the rules so that life may not become too rigid, too oppressive, yet he also exposes your complacency, your hypocrisy, your false masks. Halloween is saturated with trickster energy, for it allows chaos to reign safely for a night. But if you resist the trickster altogether, if you deny his role in your life, he will not remain playful. He will become destructive, tearing down the walls you thought would keep you safe. Better then to laugh with him in the streets, to share in the trick, than to be consumed by his vengeance. Later, do you not see how profound this festival is? You imagine it is a children's holiday, but in truth, it is a psychic drama of immense depth. You buy decorations in stores, but in the unconscious, there are invocations. The cobwebs you hang are not merely plastic. They are the threads of forgotten memory that cling to your soul. The black cat on the windowsill is not just a toy. It is the familiar spirit, the animal instinct that accompanies the witch within you. The full moon shining above the costumed crowd is not coincidence. It is the illumination of the unconscious, the silver mirror reflecting what otherwise hides in the dark. Have you ever noticed how masks liberate behavior? The shy man behind a mask becomes bold. The restrained woman behind a veil becomes wild. The ego, that fragile construction of consistency, loosens when the face is covered. The mask allows the archetype to speak directly. In ancient Greece, actors wore masks not to conceal, but to reveal. The mask amplified the voice of the god or daemon moving through the performer. Halloween repeats this rite unknowingly. When you put on the mask, you become possessed, even if only for a night, by a force greater than your ordinary personality. This is why children love it so deeply. It allows them to taste the archetypal without the burden of explanation. They become their fantasy, and in so doing, they momentarily embody the archetype. But here is a warning: if you wear the mask too long, it fuses with you. Jung once said that we all wear personas, the masks required to meet society. These are necessary, but when the persona is mistaken for the self, the true self suffocates. Halloween reminds us playfully that masks are both liberating and dangerous. You must know when to put it on and when to remove it. The archetypes are not to be lived unconsciously, for then you become their puppet. They are to be recognized, honored, and integrated. Let me share with you a dream, for dreams are often more honest than waking speech. A man once told me he dreamed of walking down a dark street on Halloween night. He saw children in costumes, but when he looked closely, their masks were not plastic, they were their faces. The vampire's teeth were real, the witch's eyes burned with fire, the skeleton's bones rattled with life. He was terrified, for he realized that he could not distinguish the mask from the reality. He ran, but the children followed, laughing, until he awoke, trembling. What does this mean? That his psyche revealed to him the truth. What we call masks are not disguises, they are revelations. We are all more archetypal than we admit. The monsters we pretend to be are, in some sense, who we already are. When I speak of the veil being thin, I do not mean it in the vulgar sense of ghosts walking physically among us. I mean that the ordinary defenses of consciousness are loosened, that the rational mind grows weary, and the images of the unconscious seep into waking life. This is why the air feels charged, why the night feels different, why your dreams around this time are more vivid. The veil is a psychic phenomenon. It is the dissolving of the boundaries between ego and archetype. For a night, you are less yourself and more the human soul at large. Now let us turn to the theme of death, for Halloween is inseparable from it. Modern society hides death, sanitizes it, whispers it in hospitals and behind closed doors, but the psyche cannot be deceived. Death is the ultimate archetype, and it demands acknowledgement. On Halloween, we flirt with death, we laugh at it, we mock it, and in so doing, we make it bearable. The skeletons, the graves, the ghosts all are rehearsals for what we cannot avoid. It is not morbidity, but wisdom to remind ourselves of mortality. For when you deny death, you deny life. When you refuse to face the grave, you cannot truly celebrate the moment. The dance of death is not a curse. It is an invitation to live authentically, to embrace what is fleeting, to burn brighter, because the night is inevitable. And yet, even as death is mocked, another archetype emerges, that of rebirth. The pumpkins, hollowed and filled with light, symbolize the seed within the darkness. The autumn leaves that fall are not an ending, but a preparation for renewal. The cycle of decay is the prelude to spring. This, too, is encoded in Halloween. Though hidden beneath layers of candy and laughter, to face death is to awaken to the possibility of transformation. To walk among the graves in jest is to begin to reconcile yourself to your own impermanence, and thus to discover the eternal within you. Do you understand now why the psyche loves this night? It is not because it is frivolous, but because it is archetypal. It allows us, if only for a brief interval, to speak the language of the soul without censorship, to wear masks, to play with fear, to laugh at death. These are not trivial games, but rituals of survival. They keep the unconscious in dialogue with the conscious. They prevent the eruption of repressed energies by giving them symbolic expression, and they remind us, in their playful way, of truths too heavy to bear in daylight. So, when the night falls and the children march in costumes, when you open the door to their demands, do not see only play. See the procession of archetypes that your ancestors once honored with offerings and prayers. See the drama of life and death replaying itself in miniature. And when you feel the veil thin, when the wind stirs with whispers, when the shadows lengthen beyond reason, do not dismiss it. Recognize it for what it is, the unconscious, closer than ever, waiting for you to listen when you dream around this season. You often find the images are saturated with symbols that mirror the collective ritual of Halloween. A dream may place you in a labyrinthine house filled with masked strangers, or in a forest where spirits walk in silence, or in a carnival where death itself performs tricks. These dreams are not inventions of your personal psyche alone. They are shaped by the atmosphere of the collective unconscious, which resonates powerfully when the veil is thin. Dreams at this time often serve as initiations, inviting you to confront what you have avoided in yourself. Imagine, for instance, the dream of a young woman who found herself walking through a graveyard. In her dream, the graves were freshly dug, and skeletons climbed out of the earth to dance. At first, she was horrified, but then she realized that the skeletons were not hostile. They were playful, almost yo-yos. They invited her to join them, to dance in the moonlight among the tombstones. She woke trembling, half in terror and half exhilarated. What did her dream reveal? That her unconscious was attempting to reconcile her to mortality. The skeletons are not only a memento of death, they are the energy of life that remains even when all else decays. They taught her that to fear death is to refuse the dance of life, and that to embrace the inevitable is to discover freedom. Another man told me he dreamed of walking on Halloween night into a house of mirrors. Every reflection showed him in a different costume a vampire, a ghost, a beast, a clown. Each mask he saw was familiar, yet disturbing. Finally, he saw a mirror that reflected no mask, only a black void where his face should be. He awoke, terrified, but do you see the meaning? The dream was a confrontation with his shadow. The masks were the personas he wore, daily charming, monstrous, foolish, seductive, but behind them all, he feared there was nothing. The void, the absence of self. Yet this void is not mere emptiness. It is the unformed potential of the self waiting to emerge once the masks are acknowledged and released. Halloween dreams often reveal this dynamic, for the unconscious takes advantage of the collective ritual to make its own demands. They remind us that the masks we wear are not lies, but expressions of archetypes within us. Yet they also challenge us to look behind the masks, to encounter what has not yet been made conscious. The veil that thins on Halloween night is not just the line between life and death. It is the veil that separates us from our own depths. You may ask why this confrontation must be closed in horror and fear. Why do the archetypes appear so terrifying, so grotesque, so dark? The answer is simple: because you have repressed them. What you repress becomes distorted. The witch is not evil, but your repression of feminine wisdom makes her appear demonic. The vampire is not merely monstrous, but your refusal to confront your own parasitic desires turns him into a figure of dread. The skeleton is not a threat, but your denial of mortality makes it an object of terror. The archetype wears the mask of your fear until you are ready to integrate its truth. Thus, what appears monstrous is often divine wisdom in disguise. Consider initiation rites across cultures. Always the initiate is led into darkness, confronted with death, tested by fear, before being reborn into a new state of consciousness. Halloween is a collective initiation disguised as play. The children, dressed as monsters, go door to door. Each door is a threshold, each offering a test. Will the adult acknowledge the spirit child with a gift, or reject it? The laughter disguises the seriousness of the ritual. The unconscious, however, knows. It knows that initiation is required, that the old self must die, even if only in parody, for a new self to be born. In this sense, Halloween awakens not only archetypes, but the archetypal process of transformation itself. You encounter death in skeletons and ghosts. You encounter shadow in masks and monsters. You encounter chaos in the trickster's pranks. And if you accept them, even with laughter, you undergo a small symbolic death and rebirth. This is why the night feels charged, why children remember it vividly, why adults secretly thrill at its strangeness. It is the unconscious conducting initiation under the guise of festivity. But beware of refusing the initiation. Those who dismiss Halloween entirely, who see only nonsense, who refuse to engage symbolically, risk leaving the archetypes unacknowledged. And what is unacknowledged returns with vengeance. The witch you laugh at becomes a neurosis that haunts your dreams. The vampire you deny becomes a possessive lover who drains you. The skeleton you mock becomes the panic attack that overwhelms you at the thought of death. Better to meet them on Halloween, when they come with masks and laughter, than to face them unbidden in the solitude of your psyche. There is also another archetype that awakens on this night, the child. You may think of Halloween as a children's holiday, but symbolically it is the child archetype who leads the procession. The child is the symbol of potential, of new life, of the future yet to be realized. On this night, the child wears the mask of death, of shadow, of chaos. This is the paradox. The future is always cloaked in darkness. The child embodies hope, but hope that must pass through fear to become real. By following the child on Halloween, we unconsciously acknowledge that our renewal is hidden in the very forces we fear. The veiled truth of Halloween, then, is this: to live fully, you must walk with death to become whole. You must embrace shadow to grow. You must dance with chaos to awaken. You must listen to the child. These truths are eternal, but they are easier to enact symbolically on this night than to bear directly in daylight. The unconscious arranges the ritual for you, and you, thinking you are merely playing, undergo its wisdom without knowing. And yet, I urge you, do not let the night pass unconsciously. Do not let it be only candy and costumes. See with the eyes of the soul. Watch how the archetypes walk the streets. Notice how laughter hides trembling. Observe how the masks both conceal and reveal. Pay attention to your dreams, for they will speak in the same language. If you approach Halloween consciously, it becomes not just a festival, but a sacred mirror. In that mirror, you will glimpse the archetypes that shape your life, the forces that move beneath your ego, the patterns that bind you to the collective drama of humanity. The secret veil, my friends, is not only between worlds, it is between meanings. To the eye of the child, the ghost is frightening. To the adult, it is a joke, but to the psyche, it is a symbol, alive with energy, demanding recognition. The veil is what blinds you to the symbolic, making you see only the literal or the superficial. On Halloween night, that veil is pierced, and you are granted vision. What you do with that vision is your choice. You may laugh and forget, or you may look deeply and be transformed. If you have followed me this far, then you already sense that what stirs on Halloween night is more than fantasy. It is the unconscious calling to be seen, and when the unconscious calls, it is never for amusement alone. It is for transformation. The archetypes that awaken witch, skeleton, vampire, ghost, trickster, do not come merely to frighten you. They come to teach, to initiate, to demand that you recognize what lies behind the veil of your ordinary self. They come so that you may remember the ancient truth that the self is larger than the ego, that you are more than the face you wear, and that the path to wholeness leads through shadow and death into renewal. Halloween is a collective ritual of the individuation process. To individuate is to integrate the opposites within you, to reconcile life with death, good with evil, conscious with unconscious. What better night for this work than the one when opposites converge, when children laugh in the face of skulls, when the living dress as the dead, when fear and joy mingle indistinguishably in the night air. It is as if the collective psyche has given itself permission once a year to rehearse the journey of individuation without knowing its name. Do you see how the witch, so feared and ridiculed, is in fact the hidden guide? She is the anima in her deepest form, the wisdom of the unconscious disguised as danger. She appears monstrous because you have rejected her. But if you dare to look beyond her terrifying laughter, you will find the wisdom that reconnects you to nature, to instinct, to the cycles of transformation, She brews the potion that heals. She stirs the cauldron of rebirth. To integrate the witch is to reclaim your inner wisdom, your capacity to see beyond the rational into the symbolic. She is not your enemy, she is your guide through the darkness. And the vampire, the one who feeds on blood, is nothing less than the shadow side of Eros. In him you see your own desire to possess, to control, to devour what you love. You shudder at his fangs. But the truth is that you are to drain others or allow yourself to be drained. He forces you to ask, in what ways do I give my life force away unconsciously? In what ways do I consume the vitality of others to avoid facing my own emptiness? If you can acknowledge this, then the vampire loses his tyranny. He becomes instead a symbol of transformation, teaching you to channel desire not as possession, but as communion, as union with the life force itself. The skeleton, endlessly grinning, is the mask of death itself. But what is death if not the ultimate mirror of life? He strips away illusions. It tells you, silently, all masks will one day fall. All flesh will one day return to dust. All roles will one day end. He terrifies because he tells the truth, but in that truth is freedom. If you can dance with him, as the medieval peasants once danced in the dance of death, you will find yourself strangely liberated. No longer will you cling so desperately to what must pass. No longer will you waste life fearing its end. To embrace the skeleton is to embrace life fully. Precisely because it is fleeting, the trickster too waits for you on this night. He overturns your expectations, makes a fool of you, mocks your seriousness. He is the child who laughs when you try to control, the prank that reminds you of your fragility. Do not despise him, for the trickster is the herald of transformation. He shatters the structures that have become too rigid, too arrogant, too blind. Without him, you would remain imprisoned in your own seriousness. To integrate the trickster is to accept laughter as wisdom, chaos as renewal, surprise as the path of the soul. And finally, the child, the one who leads the procession, knocking at your door with a demand for recognition. Do not ignore this archetype, for it is the most profound of all. The child is your future, your potential, the self not yet realized, but it arrives disguised, cloaked in fear, masked as monster or ghost. This is the paradox. Your future demands that you walk through your fear to reach it. The child asks you for a gift, not candy, but acknowledgement, attention, protection. When you honor the child, you honor your own becoming. You honor the innocence that persists even in darkness, the seed of renewal that waits beneath the mask of death. These archetypes awaken on Halloween night because the collective psyche knows that you need them. It knows that your rational world has grown too sterile, that your repression has grown too heavy, that your fear of death and shadow has grown too suffocating. So it offers you a night of play, of masks, of laughter, in which you can encounter what you would otherwise flee. Do not waste this gift. Look deeply. Laugh, yes, but understand what you laugh at. Fear, yes, but understand what you fear. For in that recognition lies your transformation. And let us speak now of the veil, the secret veil that trembles on this night. The veil is not a wall, it is a membrane, a threshold, a shimmering boundary that separates but also connects. It is the line between ego and self, between consciousness and unconsciousness, between life and death. On Halloween, you are invited to approach it, to peer through, to feel its texture. Some of you may dream of lifting it, of glimpsing what lies beyond. Do not expect clarity. The veil does not open onto a landscape of rational truths. It opens onto mystery. It opens onto the numinous, the overwhelming sense of something larger, deeper, more eternal than the mind can grasp. What lies behind the veil is not for the ego to control. It is for the soul to experience. And when you experience it, even briefly, you are changed. You may not have words for it. You may only feel the trembling, the uncanny, the awe, but that is enough. For the experience of the numinous leaves its mark. It awakens humility, reverence, and a new orientation toward life. It teaches you that you are not master of the psyche, but participant in a drama far older and larger than yourself. This, my friends, is the true gift of Halloween. Not candy, not costumes, but vision. A vision of the archetypal forces that shape you. A vision of the shadow that walks beside you. A vision of death that awaits you. A vision of rebirth that renews you. A vision of the self that calls you. On this night, if you dare, you may look behind the veil and see not with your eyes, but with your soul. And so I leave you with this. When the night falls and the masks gather, when laughter echoes in the dark streets and candles flicker in hollowed pumpkins, do not see only play. See the archetypes awakening. See the unconscious stirring. See the veil trembling. And listen, for in the laughter of children, in the dance of skeletons, in the mischief of the trickster, in the wisdom of the witch, in the hunger of the vampire, you will hear the ancient voice of the self calling you home. Step through the veil, if only in imagination. Greet your shadow, your fear, your mortality, your case, your future. Honor them as teachers, not enemies, and then return transformed to the daylight of your life. For you will know in your depth that you are not merely ego, not merely mask, not merely flesh, but soul woven of archetype, shadow, and light, eternal, even as you pass through death. This is the mystery of Halloween. This is the revelation of the secret veil.